Media left the microphones on so that anybody speaking in the courtroom could be heard on the live stream that's going out. Well, the video was off, the audio was on. And so nobody who would have been in this courtroom, which didn't include me, I wasn't here, but I was in my chambers the whole time, would have had their conversations recorded. And that would have gone out to the whole public. And however many people are listening to this throughout the entire Northwest. And I think that that's wrong. And I think private staff is entitled to some amount of privacy. And that's strike two today. So why did that happen?
My impression that the audio system should be shut off. I did not do that on purpose in any way to catch anybody. The audio system comes from your end, and I put up color bars on purpose so that I wasn't gathering any video, to my knowledge, any audio, and I left it alone. All I did was put on color bars, put it on the ground, and leave. And I thought that your system should be turned off if I was not. I don't understand.
I believe our system is.
Well, if it is, then I don't know how this would occur. If your system is still on, someone's got to hit some buttons or something.
sleep.
Oh, by the way, just as an introduce another person, and Antonio Caro is right here. Antonio is covering for Hannah for just a little bit this afternoon, and Antonio's been one of our, well, let's just put it this way. His title used to be a DITS, a DITS. That was like a digital information technology specialist, I think it was. I think they protested to the county about that job designation. I have no idea what it is now, but he'll always be a DITS to me. We love Antonio, he's a great guy, but that's why he's here, he's one of our staff people. Sorry about that. Lori, go right ahead.
Power was turned off.
And Mr. Fredericks, we're back on State's Exhibit 437, and when we left for break, you had testified that slides 690 through 912, with Mr. Collins' knee, the same area on Mr. Ellis's head, was 6.5 seconds, and I had directed you to go back to slide 690. I'd ask that you go back to slide 616, or I think you have it at 619. And can you tell us where Mr. Collins' knee is at this time?
You say 619 or 7?
We're going to go with 618, is that?
Yes.
Fine, too.
In that area. 618 is a good place to start.
Certainly.
To answer your question, Mr. Collins' left knee is in approximately the same location. It's somewhere around the neck, back of the head area of Mr. Ellis.
And at 618 forward,
Yes.
when does that separation, if at all, take place?
Around 619 to 645, Mr. Ellis raises his head above the ground, more or less turning his head. And with that upward motion, Mr. Collins' knee also comes up with that same motion. And then at 645, Mr. Ellis's head is on the ground and he's not moving. And from 645 through to the 690, where we were past 690, his head remains there. So that remains there up until the end when we discussed it. So
Which was 912 is where you had put that at the end.
yes,
Before we broke.
yeah, so 912. So 618 to 912.
And how much time passes from 618 to 912?
Almost exactly 10 seconds.
I'm sorry, what was that again, sir?
10 seconds.
Thank you.
And Mr. Fredericks, I want to go back now and have you track for us Mr. Burbank's body movements with his, I believe at 645, you had testified Mr. Burbank's left hand was on Mr. Ellis's back and his left knee with his boot between the legs. His left knee was on Mr. Ellis at that point. So.
Yes. I believe what I said is around 628, we see Mr. Burbank's left leg move from the pavement and over Mr. Ellis's right leg, and his we can only see his right lower shin and foot area resting between the two legs, and his shin is visible up into almost to the knee, which would be on the lower back of Mr. Ellis. and his hand is on Mr. Ellis's, looks like mid-back to right shoulder blade area.
And can you take us through Mr. Burbank's body movement with Mr. Ellis through to the taser?
Yes. Yes. At this point at 6:69, we still see this taser wire that we looked at before after the initial activation, hanging down from the end of the taser device. I've tracked from 6:69 upward where we see Mr. Ellis's arm move upward, and it's straight, and Mr. Burbank is kneeling sort of with his left knee in the area of Mr. Ellis's back. His right elbow is rested on his right leg. Sorry, a minute, orient myself here. Mr. Burbank's right knee, and his right foot is on the ground, not on Mr. Ellis. His left leg isn't moving, and then we get to slide 803 when Mr. Ellis, you can see that his right foot.
I'm sorry. I don't know if it's heard it, but you're not saying that Mr. Ellis could see it.
No, I see the video shows Mr. Ellis' right foot turn. So that's not an artifact, that's his right foot is turning. As his right foot turns, exposing more the back of his leg, and his buttocks turns more toward the camera, his whole hip and leg is just turning completely 180 degrees. And as he completes that turn, Mr. Burbank's knee comes through and onto the ground. So it moves forward with the movement of Mr. Ellis's as he rolls over. Mr. Burbank's body turns and his knee comes off of Mr. Ellis and onto the ground.
And so with the Mr. Ellis rolling over, is just one hit coming up off the ground?
His left foot is pointed, pardon me, his right foot is pointed toward the camera. So the top of his right foot is pointed toward the camera. His left heel is in the air. And as he turns his right foot, and basically 180, so that now the heel is facing the camera, come fully over, we can see his right heel is, his left heel is still up in the air. So it has not really changed its orientation. So just the right side of Mr. Ellis turned, basically 180 degrees. And that coincided with Mr. Burbank starting at 8:10, shifting forward, and his knee comes in contact with the ground.
So Mr. Ellis, only one hip comes up as it turns over.
It doesn't come up. The hip.
Just turns.
We have a good definition between the ground, the dark ground, and his yellow or orangish sweatpants. They don't separate, so it stays in contact. So he just turns.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you for the clarification. And when you go through that, you testified previously that sometimes with speed there's a blur that goes with that. Is there any indication of that rotation or the turning of it?
I'm at 8:15. The whole image has no blur in it. His foot has no blur in it. When I go backwards as that event starts, the only place there is blur is when the camera is moving, causing the blur. So that movement isn't a real fast movement. And it seems to be relatively consistent. As I said, the only place where there's blur is when the camera's in blur and everything is in blur. But when we have those periodic moments when the camera blur goes away, everything becomes in focus, and there's no blur in the area of his foot or leg. So the video doesn't suggest that he was moving any faster than any of the other objects.
And when Mr. Burbank's knee comes down and off of Mr. Ellis's back, approximately how much time passes?
About a half a second from the beginning of the turn until his foot comes off his back.
And what happens to Mr. Ellis's hand that you're able to see during that time?
As Mr. Collins, who has control of Mr. Ellis's right hand, Mr. Collins is using his left hand, and as he goes forward, his knee comes off, he goes down, he goes... Sorry, Mr. Burbank, I'm sorry. I apologize for the confusion. I'll do my best. So when Mr. Burbank is holding on to Mr. Ellis's right hand, as he comes off in that half second, he goes on top of Mr. Ellis's right arm as he kind of falls on top of it as he goes down. And I've tracked that movement with the arrow. And at that point, his hand is roughly in the same position as Mr. Burbank's left knee that has come off.
Slide 833.
Yes.
Can you take us through until the second taser application?
Second taser application occurs at slide 899 at 23:22:29.
And with the taser application following through, are you able to make any determinations of Mr. Ellis's movement and use and
Mr. Ellis, at the timing of the taser application, as with the first one, he then begins to move his legs rapidly. We can notice there's motion blur in his legs, so they're going back and forth. His legs are moving fairly quickly, and when you compare it to the other body parts of Mr. Collins and Mr. Burbank, and so we can see his legs are moving backwards and forwards rapidly, and that lasts up until the conclusion, just after the conclusion. So the conclusion of the taser activation is at 23:22:34, and the movement, that's at slide 1031. And by about almost 2 seconds, second and a half, then he stops moving.
And that's at 1088.
Yes, approximately.
And just for clarification, you have on the exhibit in red lettering and numbers a time of each taser application. Is that lit up a little brighter when the taser application is actually occurring as a red brighter?
Yes, just for reference purposes, go back to when it concluded. So I've got the second taser activation still highlighted in red because it's still being active. And as I go through to slide 1031, it's turned off. That's about the 5-second period of time.
And at 1031, where is Mr. Collins' knee in relation to Mr. Ellis?
His knee is on the ground in the front of Mr. Ellis's.
Mr. Collins or Mr. Burbank?
Mr. Burbank's knee is on the ground. I'm sorry, Mr. Collins. Let me just go back. Let me just go back to get a reference. So at 876, Mr. Collins' knee is on Mr. Ellis's head. As I go forward to the taser activation, Mr. Collins' knee comes backwards and away. At 9:20, there is space between Mr. Ellis's head and Mr. Collins' knee, so they're not in contact. We can see the space.
And then after or during the taser application, is there any point in which Mr. Collins' knee is again in contact with Mr. Ellis's head.
If I go forward, we can see that there is a downward motion by Mr. Collins' left knee, upper leg area at slide 928. Downward motion coincides with the downward motion of Mr. Ellis's head at that point. That's at 934. And then as I move forward, there's some movement by Mr. Ellis as he moves his body. And again, Mr. Collins' knee comes up, and that's at 1034. Slide 1034. And then down again, and again, downward motion consistent with both Mr. Ellis's head and Mr. Collins' knee at 1042.
And how long does it stay in contact with Mr. Ellis's head from 1042 on?
Mr. Collins' left knee slides off the back of Mr. Ellis's head at slide 1167.
Does it then make contact again with Mr. Ellis's head following that?
No. I didn't answer your question about how long it was on his head. I'm trying to remember. What was the slide that I gave you before?
1034 it came up and then went back down at 1042.
Approximately, that event was approximately 3 seconds.
And then you had also testified that at about 928, which coincided with, it was a downward motion by Mr. Collins' knee, which coincided with Mr. Ellis's head coming down at approximately 934. So if you can give me the time from 928 until 1034, please.
Five seconds.
And then how much time passes from when his knee comes up at 1034 to back down again at 1042?
A fifth of a second.
So other than that fifth of a second, from 928 until 1167, his knee is in contact with Mr. Ellis's head
Yes.
for approximately, you said 5 and 3, so approximately 8 seconds.
Approximately.
And then I want to go through, we also went through part of that with Mr. Burbank and his location. What is happening with Mr. Burbank's in relation to Mr. Ellis from the time of the start of the second taser until 1167? That's what's happening here.
Mr. Burbank is on his feet, still holding on to Mr. Ellis's right arm. Mr. Ellis, or Mr. Burbank moves downward. That's at 9:55.
And is that while the taser is activated?
Yes, taser's activated. And he is in a position where his right leg is between the camera and Mr. Ellis's right leg, and his left leg is on the other side of Mr. Ellis's right leg.
And you're not able to make any determination of his left leg is in contact at all with Mr. Ellis?
No.
Okay.
I can see his left knee, but I can't tell you where it is.
And after the second taser application, I believe you testified there's approximately 2 seconds of movement by Mr. Ellis.
Yes?
And then at what point does Mr. Ellis stop moving?
One moment, please. There's movement by Mr. Ellis for about 3 seconds, just a bit less than 3 seconds, after the conclusion of the second taser. His right leg is visible to the camera. We can see his right shoe. And as I'm moving forward through the video frames at this point, the camera pans to the right and we lose view of his foot. And that's at 12:35. The camera pans back, and at 12:76, I can see his foot. And we zoom in, the camera zooms in, and we can see it more clearly. His foot is in the same position. So I can't say whether or not it's moved when the camera panned over, but it's in the same position when the camera came back.
So slide 12:35 through 12:76, there's a camera movement, but when it comes back, the foot is in the same position as it was when the camera moved.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you to go back on the approximately 3 seconds of movement by Mr. Collins after the second taser.
By Mr. Ellis?
Thank you. Well, we're both doing it, but Mr. Ellis, where was Mr. Collins' knee on Mr. Ellis's head, other than that fifth of a second? Was it on his head during that time period of the 3 seconds?
Yes.
So you have at 12:76, you indicated that the camera pans back and Mr. Ellis's foot is in the same position as it was at 12:35.
Yes.
And when it pans back, what is visible on camera from there, is there any further movement from Mr. Ellis that is detectable?
The camera shows that despite some of the motion blur, that the foot remains in the same position, and any blur is that we see where the foot appears to get larger is just by blur, and it's not motion. So there's no motion. The car, there's no motion up until that point, and then a car goes right to left through the screen at 13:21, and it obstructs the view. And when that car clears at 13:84, the foot is still in the same XY coordinate. It hasn't moved from that position.
And I want to pause you right there. Can you identify where Mr. Collins' knee is at that point?
It appears to be on the ground right behind Mr. Ellis's head.
And Mr. Burbank?
Can't see where his left knee is. His right foot is on the ground. He's in a crouched position.
And then moving forward, there's still at this point no identifiable movement by Mr. Ellis?
Yeah, there's no movement.
Okay.
Yeah. And Another vehicle goes through the field of view at 15:35. And then we come back to the position at where the camera saw his foot at 16:27, and his foot's in the same position.
And whose body is that?
Mr. Collins' back is to the camera, and we can see Mr. Burbank's right hand with the taser in his right hand. And the camera is in a vehicle, and the vehicle is moving past the scene, so that's why the perspective looks slightly different. And we're just capturing the in-motion blur as he's moving his camera as he's trying to drive. This is motion blur, and this is the heel of Mr. Ellis's foot, which is still in the same position.
Still in the same position
Yeah.
as what it was back at 12:35?
Yes, and so at about that time, at slide 1649, there's the third taser activation.
And from 12:35 to 16:49, is there any indication of movement of Mr. Ellis's foot or body prior to that third taser?
His foot remains stationary in that position.
And how much time passed from 12:35 to 16:49?
What's the slide start number, please?
The start is 12:35.
The time is 23:22:40 and 200 milliseconds. And the taser activation is at 22:54. So, just short of 14 seconds.
15 seconds. And that, you had testified earlier that because we don't have an on-camera view, but from 12:35 to 12:76, there was blur. How much time passes during that time?
From 12:35 to...
To 12:76.
(12:35 to 12:76). I should have had a pen and write this down. What was the start time I gave you, please?
I didn't write down the start time. The 12:35 was the first frame.
Yeah,
after the
I'll go back.
issue.
So that is at 23:22:40.2. And 12:76 is 23:22:41.5, so 1.3 seconds.
So approximately 1.3 seconds, you don't have Mr. Ellis's foot shoe in view.
Correct.
But it remained in the same place when it came back, being in view.
I think this is the third time you've asked that.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I just want to make sure I'm not overestimating the time, so. I will move to a different area. In this section of the, actually, what time does this Mr. Cowden's video end, or does he drive off?
He drives off, but he turns his camera away from the activity, and for a moment it's facing down the road as he's driving away, and there's no sound, there's nothing showing. But that point where he moves the camera away is at 23:22:54, and it's during the activation of the third taser.
And there are two other vehicles that we saw pass in front of Mr. Cowden's vehicle, with the defendants and Mr. Ellis on the ground. Do you know, based on your review of the evidence and the data, videos, who was located in either one of those vehicles?
The Vivint video shows the two vehicles pull away from the house, and I know who's driving each of those vehicles, yes.
And who have they been identified as?
The McDowell video and a male associate.
Mr. Lowry?
I believe that's his name.
You testified earlier that this exhibit 437 was created from a larger exhibit. Did you also have exhibit 438 that is a video exhibit, substantially the same as this one, without the third taser activation on it?
Yes, so it's the audio from Vivint, and it's the video playing in real time.
And you testified earlier about the authentication process that you went through, and is that accurate, consistent with Exhibit 438 also?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state offers into evidence 438.
Same, well, no objection to condition. Their testimony.
Mr. Husser? Okay. This is Exhibit 438.
Won't publish until I get ready. Run through it.
Just we'll put them up here.
Of the same pattern of the taser communication, so I would object.
On the basis of cumulative?
Same video, Judge.
I take it it's not exactly the same video.
It's video versus PDF, and we were going to play it through so the jurors can watch it played through. And
You're not going to stop frame by frame.
Nope.
Why can't you play, you can't play this that same way?
Not with the audio. Huh?
Yeah, it has so when you do
Oh, I see.
PDFs, there's no audio.
So the difference is the audio's in it.
There's that.
Okay.
Admitted 546, which contains the same video with the audio, now 437, and now they're attempting to admit a third copy of the same video absent the third taser application.
546 has the Vivint video included, and it also has the it has the video included.
All right. Anything else from the defense?
Nothing for me, Judge.
Okay. 438 is admitted subject to the authentication by the folks who actually took the videos.
And stop publishing.
You can show it if you care to the jury.
State does wish to publish, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Audio? Just a minute.
Hold off one second. Your Honor, we're having a little bit of an issue with the audio on it.
Is it connected to a speaker?
Thanks.
There we go. Sounds like
Just arrest him!
Can you put it back up?
Just 1 second.
And before you said the audio from that is from the Vivint?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
7317, go ahead.
Just arrest him! Just arrest him! Oh my god, that looks so scary!
Y'all off the road right
Shut up! Get up to the car, you dumbass! You don't even know. Shut the fuck up!
7317.
Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up!
I'm not 698.
Shut the fuck up! You know what?
Sorry, traffic 7317 on control 968, we're 2622.
Go around them.
Hello, security? 7317 unreadable.
Question.
Mr. Fredericks, did you also prepare a exhibit which would provide the camera perspectives and the viewpoint perspectives of all the eyewitnesses and recordings in this case?
Yes.
And is that depicted in exhibit number 544?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state offers into evidence 544. No. I'm offering it into evidence, so I can publish it. We're not publishing it yet. 544, camera perspectives.
I believe, gentlemen, you can see, and counsel, you can see this on your deals, but it's not on the screen for the jurors. So just so you know what they're talking about. All right.
Come over here for a second, Your Honor.
Sure.
So this is, Mr. Frederick, exhibit number 544, right?
Yes.
I mean, this obviously is not taken on the evening of this situation since it's daytime, correct?
Yes.
Do you know when it was taken?
It's a historic record from Google Earth that provides the perspective from the satellite view and the geometry of the streets and the layout and distances. The date is available. I could find it, but I don't have it right now.
Right. I mean, it's not, is it fair to say it doesn't accurately depict what was located, for instance, garbage cans on the night of this incident, correct?
Correct. It's not intended to reproduce the environment that occurred at the time. It's just to give an approximate location of features of the street. For instance, the corners of the roadway, the lines on the street. Then I'll point out the perspective of the camera views and the witness views.
I would note, I believe this is the same, it's a little zoomed out. It is the same as the exhibit that was utilized in opening for the view.
I guess I'd say, for illustrative purposes, I probably don't object. For substantive evidence, I do.
May I question the witness, Judge?
Sure.
Mr. Fredericks, I'm looking at my exhibit 544 is 12 pages or 12 slides. Is that accurate?
So, 1 second, please.
Yeah.
It's 12, yes.
And there's a variety of overheads of the intersection of 96 and Ainsworth, correct?
Correct.
And in the exhibit, you attempt to gain a perspective from each of the videos that thus far, right?
An overview highlighted the areas of coverage, yes.
Right. And how are you obtaining the areas of coverage, or how are you estimating that?
I'm examining the left and right frame, and the top and the bottom frame perspective that is most common in the handheld camera, and saying that from this perspective, this is the area that was in view of that camera.
But you can't say that what you have articulated here is the perspective or view in the specific cameras in this case, can you?
Yes, that's what I've done.
How so?
I've studied the perspective of, as the camera pans back and forth, what's the extreme left, the extreme right perspective that it got, and then from the perspective of the camera, I can see what buildings, what trees are within those perspectives. Then I went to Google Earth and approximated that field of view with a highlight coloring the area.
Well, on the field of view, you have to articulate the start point of the camera angle, correct?
No, this is basically this camera during the period of time of this recording panned back and forth and covered this particular viewpoint.
But from a specific location, from a specific starting point, correct?
During the majority of the recording, yes.
And how did you pinpoint that on the overheads that we see as part of this exhibit?
From field of view. So the field of view of the camera, the further one moves forward with the field of view, things in the foreground will begin to disappear. So we can see, as I said, the approximate location of that perspective.
All right, and so did you use the Faro scan that was done in this case to pinpoint the location that we've been discussing?
I considered the Faro scan data, but I didn't rely on it. I considered it, and it was consistent.
Well, and the Faro scan would give you exact distances from the location that camera is located when it captures the scene, correct?
No, well, it could if they did what's called a camera match overlay, which they didn't do.
Okay.
So if they had done the camera match overlay, depending on the methodology, that could have assisted to some degree. I've done many of those. I owned a Faro scanner, so I applied the same methodology to establishing position.
Okay, and so if I understand you, exhibit 544, you're estimating the location and the field of vision based on the type of camera or phone that was used that we know in this case. Is that fair?
Based on what it showed, not necessarily the lens structure of the camera, but what it showed, what I could see in the camera that I could also see on the Google Earth view.
Okay. So if I understand, that's the view of the video itself used to estimate the field of view on the exhibit.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. That's all I have.
Any objection, Mr. Esser?
I think it should be admitted for illustrative purposes, but it's not the perspective of the videos, and so I don't think it should be admitted as such.
Well, I'm not sure they offered it for illustrative purposes only. Is that what you're asking?
We're offering it, Your Honor, for substantive evidence.
So, there's your answer.
Right. And I object to it.
I object.
It
Okay.
goes to weight, not admissibility, Your Honor.
Mr. Conrad, any comments?
Did you go out and make these measurements yourself?
I did visit the scene. I didn't make the measurements at the scene. I used the Google Earth view to make the measurements. Also, from the perspectives of the doorbell camera, it's affixed to a house. It is. It doesn't move. It has a very specific field of view. The camera from the witness, McDowell, was in her car. The video shows where her car is. The Cowden video or vehicle is in a fixed position with certain objects on the street in view in front of the vehicle. So the perspectives, I'm very confident that the positions are accurately reproduced there. And as far as the measurements go, I have approximated the distances. I haven't said this is exactly what they are. They're very close. And I've relied on my study of Google Earth measure tool and all of the testing that I've done with.
I'm going to object to narrating at this point, Your Honor. It's a very simple question. Did you go out and make these measurements yourself, Mr. Fredericks?
I made the measurements myself using Google Earth.
Okay, so you went on Google Earth online, correct?
Correct.
And then you clicked your cursor on one point and dragged to another point that you believed would be the viewpoint and clicked your cursor again to approximate the measurements.
On Google Earth, but as we said, the Faro scan provides consistent data. So Faro scan provides the measurements of the street, which are consistent with Google Earth. So The Faro scanner provides accuracy to within in that particular density is a 1/4 of an inch accuracy. And the measurements of Google Earth are consistent within a few inches.
Okay. But you're not using the Faro scan here for your measurement.
I used the Faro scan to validate the distances of the area when I looked at the Faro scan. I didn't overlay the cameras, so I didn't do a camera match. But as far as the distances from, as a standard, how far is it from one corner of the intersection to the other corner, that can be measured to within 1/4 of an inch, so within a 1/2 an inch accuracy. Then when you use Google Earth to measure the same period, or the same location, they're within a couple of inches from each other. So it all depends on how accurately we can identify within Google Earth the position. But my comparison with Faro was that Google Earth was within a couple of inches across the whole street. So when I use Google Earth then to measure from one area to another, I'm getting an approximate of X number of feet.
Okay.
So it's within a couple of inches.
The Faro scan didn't cover certain camera perspectives from the differing.
Doesn't have to. No. So when we measure objects on an area, scan with Faro, we could then create a measurement. That measurement then is depicted within Google Earth of how many pixels per foot. So we have a measurement of, 10 feet and it's 10 pixels, then 1 foot per pixel. So we can use that as a standard. When we then measure with Google Earth, we can establish a confidence. But that's why I put an approximate, and it's arguably a couple of inches on both sides.
Remind me, is the Faro scan listed as one of the sources of information for camera perspectives that you listed here?
No.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Just so we're all clear about this, could you tell us what a Faro scan is?
A Faro scanner is
Face the jury if you
a
want.
Faro scanner is a 3D scanning device that has a series of mirrors that rotate. It samples distance using 3 specific laser sensors. So it's scanning at a very, very high rate. The scanner itself is rotating, causing the mirror to send off a laser, hits an object, comes back into the device, and it reads not just distance, but it reads color and it reads brightness. And it creates a actual photographic picture of what the scanner is seeing, and it rotates 360 degrees. And it creates, you can set it for certain densities, so it creates a X, Y, and Z axis measurement for everything it touches. And it creates a completely full environment. The scanner is designed, depending on the density of the scans, to be placed at certain intervals in a scene. They're then what's called stitched together. The data, when it's stitched together, can be blended, and then anything within the environment that is contained within those laser scan areas can be then blended together, so we can then measure across scans. The device itself, the software, can do what's called a mesh overlay, creating a realistic video for things like fly-throughs, and it's 3D realism that provides a sub-inch measurement from objects, even like depending on the density, very, very close. So if we were to just do this little area, I might just do it with one high-density scan, not multiple, and it would pick up the lint on the carpet, and you could measure the length of the lint on the carpet, and it would measure from any perspective to another perspective in an environment. So it enables us to do some pretty significant measurements.
I take it that what you were measuring is an area that's outside of the Faro scan, at least in part.
Most of it was within the area, but the point about the accuracy of Google Earth is that, first of all, my peers have undergone a lot of discussion and training using peer-reviewed publications on the accuracy of Google Earth and what we can rely on. Having said that, it's always good if we're doing traffic cases where traffic collisions occur. and we see an object on the ground, we scan the area where there's a skid pattern to an impact pattern, we want to get exact so that the crash analysts can then do their calculations for speed. So we'll go onto Google Earth and we'll scan an area that's depicted on Google Earth.
Well, you're kind of going beyond where I was going. I mean, I'm just trying to find out, I mean, if you weren't using an area, measuring outside of the area that the Faro scan was used, the Faro scan's kind of the gold standard of all this. Is that fair to say?
It's one of them. There's many scanners that are similar to it.
Right, but I mean, there's no issue that it's more accurate than Google Earth is going to be, right?
Oh, I would agree.
So,
yes.
so why not use the Faro since you had it?
Because the Faro is a very expensive device to use, and it takes a lot of time. You want to block off the street, but it was already done by the police.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So it's already done. You didn't have to redo it, right?
Google Earth was as accurate for my calculations that I needed it to be. I'm not doing.
Yeah. Could you flip through the? Because I don't know what all these other screens are. Could you flip through the other ones for a
Yes.
moment? I'm sorry?
I just had one thing, Your Honor. I had a text from someone watching the live feed, and they said that they can't hear the witness. Maybe, I'm not sure if it's a mic on or not.
He's got it on.
It's on.
Hopefully it's been turned on.
Just want to let you know.
People back here are saying they can hear it. So I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a technical difficulty between here and the television station, or our internet. Okay. Now these color shading areas, you're saying this is the area that was entirely covered at some point or another by a particular camera.
Yes, this area from the Vivint camera is static, and it is what.
Okay, that's the Vivint one. Okay, since it didn't move, obviously.
Correct. And that's the approximate distance to a manhole.
Well, that's right. Just show them to me.
That's it. That's all.
Okay. On the Cowden video, I mean, we know he kind of moves it, right?
Yes.
And he kind of moves it side to side too.
Yes.
And so, would this shade be over-inclusive, if you will, of what he saw at any particular point in time?
Let me just review for a second. Yes. This particular view from Cowden was just the most common area where he was focused on.
All right, so if he moved, we might have a slightly different sort of triangle or whatever of what was within the camera, but it wouldn't be represented here.
Yes. In fact, he drove away, right? We can see his camera drive down the road.
Right, and we're not showing any of that part of what you can see. All right, answer my questions anyway. So, your objections are what again?
The objection was, there's no objection that for illustrative purposes, but it should be in substitute evidence.
Yeah, but why?
Because I don't think it accurately depicts what was occurring that particular evening, and nor can it. So.
Should I object? I mean, I'm looking at page 7 of 12. Maybe we should have this outside the presence of the jury. He's suggesting he knows McDowell's perspective, what she can see and where. From what? What is he basing that on, other than the field of view couldn't contain those things? That's misrepresenting what her perspective was and what she could see.
Well, I've got another concern about the McDowell one, which is that we haven't got to McDowell at this point. I mean, his composite video doesn't include the McDowell video, right?
That's correct, Your Honor. We're going to address the McDowell video at another time. We can certainly go through this sans that page.
I would say at least for now, unless you're going to take that out of Exhibit 544, then it shouldn't be in there.
Why don't we just go through the first couple, if the court's admitting that for substantive purposes, we'll just go through Cowden and Vivint.
Well, Sam, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of this thing, but I got to keep a record, right? And I can't parse this. I've got to either have it all in or not all in. Or it's got to be redacted in some other portion submitted at a different time.
It can take him 2 minutes to redact it. Otherwise, we can go on to another exhibit now.
I would say-
And then at break, we'll do the redaction.
I would say let's do that,
Sounds good, Your Honor.
and
Thank
maybe
you.
we'll come back to this.
So let's move on to exhibit 546, please. which has been previously admitted.
I'm sorry, did you say 543?
546.
546.
I thought I said.
Thank you. You probably did, I just wasn't sure.
And, Your Honor, permission to publish?
.446 was previously admitted, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead then.
Thank you. Mr. Fredericks, what time does 546 start?
23, 21, 39.
And just before you play this or publish this exhibit, is it a synchronized video of the Vivint video, which is a doorbell video, and the Cowden video with the audio?
Yes.
Please go through.
Play.
Yes, please.
Seven 317, go ahead.
Hey, y'all on the road right now!
Henry 317.
87.
Not 6 Alright, traffic Henry 317 on trouble 968, we're 2622.
Try again. Go around the
Henry 317 unreadable. Four sector cars fast.
You testified earlier about the two vehicles that passed through were previously identified, with one driver being Ms. McDowell and the other one Mr. Keon Lowry. In the beginning of that video, there's a Vivint that has two cars that are located. Are you able to bring up just that front frame and identify the vehicles that are in that frame?
I can zoom in if you like.
Yes, please.
From the Vivint video, the first vehicle is where Ms. McDowell is located, and Mr. Lowry is located directly behind.
And the amber lights in the front of Ms. McDowell's vehicle, have you been able to identify what vehicle that is?
That's the police vehicle.
And you testified earlier that Mr. Ellis made his purchase from 7-Eleven at 2311, and it was an approximate 10-minute walk to the intersection here.
Yes.
And this, you testified, started at 2321. And what was the rest of that time?
The Vivint videos, the first images from the Vivint video during this incident is at 23:21:41.
And to your knowledge, is that the first video that's available from any source regarding this incident?
Yes.
And you testified earlier that the Vivint video is designed to capture what's up close. That's poorly phrased. Can you tell us why we're not able to see closer up or individuals in the intersection from this video?
This is MPEG video. It's a relatively low resolution. I could zoom in and show the pixels. You can see how it kind of breaks apart a little bit. But it's just not designed to capture events that are a long way away. It's designed to capture identifiable events that are probably within 12 to 15 feet.
And even with your tools, if you had expertise, if you zoomed in, you wouldn't be able to identify individuals that are in the intersection.
No.
Thank you. You go ahead and take that one down. And then permission to publish 434, Your Honor, which is, again, has been previously admitted and is a section of the lengthy sync video.
I believe 434 likewise was previously admitted, so proceed.
This starts at 23. 23:23:12.
Under 217 update when you're available.
Help? Oh, that's my son. Back, I'm coming.
Alright, traffic, Henry 21796 at Ainsworth, keep the area open, 2323.
We're at, come on, we're at. Keep off guard.
Go. 315, scene 24.
Great, someone bring some hobbles. Yeah, they're not too much.
Social and scene 8 Adam or Ainsworth. And State Patrol and County is around as well.
Viewing the video, what time does the first police vehicle arrive that you can see in the video?
Well, the first cover unit.
Thank you. Backup cover.
Second, please.
Correct.
The Vivint video begins to record again at 23:24, 34.3, and a vehicle is present in the video when the video starts to record again that wasn't there before, in approximately the same location that Ms. McDowell was parked. And in the first image of the vehicle, we see an officer exiting the driver's side. An officer has already exited the passenger side and is in motion, and we can just see its motion blur, and we can see that individual, the passenger, moving fairly quickly up the street, and then we can see the driver moving past the police vehicle toward the scene.
And in your review of the evidence, were you able to identify who was the driver of that vehicle?
I believe it was Rankin.
Do you know who was in the first vehicle that responded? That responded to the second police vehicle, the first one to respond to the location after defendants?
One was Rankin. I don't recall the other officer's name at this moment.
It's Officer Ford, sound familiar?
Thank you. Yes, that's what I understand. I don't know them, but that's what I was told. That's what's in the reports that I read. Thank you.
Go from, oh, and just for clarification, the audio that we're also hearing on this includes the radio dispatch.
Yes.
And if we can go to exhibit number 435, which has been previously admitted. And Your Honor, permission to publish. Oh.
Proceed.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fredericks, previously you testified about an Iona White video from the residence, the same residence as the Vivint video. Is that included in the sync segment that we're going to review in 435?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
And this starts at 23:32:04.
There's somebody in the middle of that doggy pile.
And based on your review of the reports, were you able to determine well, were the individuals depicted from law enforcement agencies based on your review of the reports?
Yes. Multiple law enforcement and emergency services agencies were present there.
Your Honor, if I can have just a few minutes.
Take our afternoon recess this time. Would that work?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll do that. All right, we'll be at break for 15 minutes. Please do. So what did you figure out about the exhibit?
Your Honor, we redid the exhibit. It's going to be Exhibit 549, and it does not contain anything regarding McDowell perspective.
Is this a new 549 or?
It will be, it's the first 549 that we've had.
All right, so let me see. So 549 is 544 with the McDowell stuff removed? Is that what it is? Have you guys seen 549, I guess it is?
Trying to get it saved to jump drive to.
By you guys, I mean the defense?
We can
Show it to the defense.
put it up right now.
Yeah, please.
Yep, absolutely.
You said redacted exhibit 544?
No, it's a new exhibit.
It's a new exhibit, I guess they're calling it 549? Did we have a 549 before?
No.
Okay, so
But it's a redaction of
It-
exhibit 544.
my understanding is it's 544 with the stuff from McDowell and Lowry, I guess, removed.
Judge, when the court's ready to, I wanted to bring up another issue.
I want you to look at this to make sure
sir.
it's good. When you're done with that, we'll take your issue up.
Thank you.
Yeah, have you had a chance to review it?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Okay, great.
Mr. Fredericks, I'm looking at the, actually, this one is on your screen. What's the red line? What do you document as the red line with the arrow in the midst of that field?
It references the annotation of approximately 68 feet.
So that's a measurement
Yes,
in the field.
correct.
Yeah, it says from Cowden, so I take it the bottom part of the red line is where you think Mr. Cowden was located.
Where the front of his vehicle is roughly located.
Okay, so that's a little different from where he was located with the camera, right?
Yes,
By
that's
the
why
li-
that's why it's approximate. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
So this is a guesstimate of what someone might have been able to see from maybe that location. And so that's, I have the same objection.
well, I don't know about a guesstimate.
Say again, Judge?
I mean, it's not a guesstimate. I mean, there was a video of what one could see.
Right, the video speaks for itself. This is Mr. Fredericks trying to document the perspective, what he could see from where, guessing where Mr. Cowden was located relative to the field of vision.
Right. It's an approximation of where these things are in relationship to one another. I don't have any real problem with that. I mean, he could have, just can draw this stuff on a board. We do it all the time. And it's a lot less precise than this. Now, we already talked about it wasn't the Faro thing, and so it's not the gold standard, but it is what it is, and it seems to me it's within the realm of reasonableness to consider this. So, you guys have looked at this thing now? Defense has? All right. So, what have I got? All right, now Mr. Conrad, you indicated you had something else you want to take up?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's that?
I don't know if the state's intending on moving to admit Exhibit 442, but, I mean, I think on behalf of the defense, we're going to take issue with that, especially given the court's prior ruling on motions in limine.
State's not addressing that exhibit at this point.
What about 444 and 445?
The state is going to be utilizing 444 and moving to admit that.
What about 445?
The state is not addressing that exhibit today.
Okay. And is Mr. Frederick's intent on offering opinion as to the different positions of officers that are contained within that 444?
He will offer an opinion as to the position of Mr. Ellis and a position of an officer, and he will not identify that officer. He will point out the officer, but won't state who that officer is.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take issue with that, for sure. And I'd like an opportunity to voir dire the witness about that opinion, because it's not contained anywhere within his report.
When we get to exhibit, what was that number?
It's Exhibit 444, Your Honor, and you can certainly put it up on the screen, please.
Suppose we could take it up now, I suppose.
So, Mr. Fredericks, you wrote a report in this case, correct?
Yes.
And that's in February of 2022, is that right?
Yes.
And the report that you did contained all of the work that you've done and been asked to do in this case?
To the time of writing the report, but I've done more work since.
Okay. Including creating this Exhibit 444?
Yes.
Okay. And where have you documented how you created 444?
It wasn't documented.
You didn't document any of your work?
On 444, no.
Okay. And this is not an original of what the source video was for 444, correct?
This video is contained within the sync view, which was in my report, so it's part of my report. I just magnified it, stabilized it at the request of the Attorney General's office for this proceeding.
Well, just magnified it and stabilized it, correct?
Correct,
Is that
yes.
what you said?
Yes.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to magnifying and stabilizing a video, correct?
It's a technician's job, I mean, it takes a lot of work, but it's not too complicated.
Okay. And you didn't document any of the methodology that you used to accomplish the magnification of this exhibit?
No, same methodology as the magnification of the other exhibits.
Okay. But it's not contained in your report anywhere, correct?
No, this work product is not.
Okay. And then in terms of cropping this video, did you crop this video as well?
Yes, cropped, magnified, and stabilized. The cropping is part of the magnification.
Okay. And what does that do to the pixelization of the video when you magnify and crop it?
The process uses what's called a nearest neighbor interpolation method, which maintains the integrity of the original pixels. Once the stabilization kicks in, it goes to what's called a bicubic interpolation method. The bicubic interpolation method is intended to keep the integrity of the neighboring pixels as the object is in motion.
And did you do any tracking within your work on Exhibit 444?
No, just the tracking required to stabilize it. So identifying an object and then holding the image to that object so it stays stable.
Okay. So in terms of any pixelization tracking that you've done, you like previously you testified about tracking Manuel Ellis' hands within another video, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you used a specific program in order to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I used the same program, but I didn't do any of that tracking.
Okay, not with Exhibit 444.
Correct.
Okay, so in terms of magnifying, do you remember whether you magnified it 1.5 times, 2 times, 3 times?
My recollection is 300%.
Okay.
That'd be 3 times.
And when did you complete that?
Possibly in August, end of August, possibly September, early September.
Of this year?
Yes.
Okay. And when you magnify images and stabilize them, what happens to the data in the image?
What kind of data?
The data of the video.
Oh, the data of the video is it's a transcoding process, so the data is not maintained, but the original video still has the metadata. So anytime a process is done to video, the metadata of the original recording won't survive it. And that's one of the ways we tell whether a video's been altered.
Okay. So in terms of the work that you've done, so you essentially took Miss White's original video, you magnified it, stabilized it, zoomed, well, and then you created 444, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you intend to offer an opinion as to the positioning of any of the officers in Exhibit 444?
I was asked my opinion as to whether a particular officer was on the other side or near side of Mr. Ellis, and where in reference to his head they were. And I can provide an opinion regarding the limitations of the video to make any firm statements. So, in other words, I can provide an opinion that may not answer the question, but basically says that question cannot be answered because of the limitations from the video.
So your opinion is that you can't tell the positioning of the officer?
Well, my opinion is that the video does not tell us whether or not there is contact between Mr. Ellis and any of the officers.
Okay.
But that the officer is positioned on the far side of Mr. Ellis and obviously lower in the image, so not far away. But there's no possibility to show whether there's contact.
What do you mean not far away?
Well, when the camera is up at a higher viewpoint and somebody is further away, they will appear lower in the image. That's just the mechanics of perspective. So this person is lower in the image because they're very close, but in a crouched downward position, but on the far side of Mr. Ellis, but not like 10 feet away.
How close is the individual to Mr. Ellis?
I can't measure, and the video can't be used to measure that because of perspective issues.
Okay. And how high was the camera when it was taken in terms of perspective, the height of the camera?
It was from the interior of the residence, which is up above street level, going through the window.
Okay. But you don't know the actual height in terms of feet or inches or anything
Correct,
like that?
yes.
Okay.
This was a handheld video, right?
That's correct.
So it also depends on the height of the person who was doing it.
That would have one factor, but again, if we use the Faro scanner, that could be defined.
But we haven't done that though, right?
That wasn't done.
And I suppose a person could be taking a video like this or like this, so it doesn't, her
Correct.
size may have little to do with it, I suppose?
Yes.
Okay. Continue. Mr. Conrad?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you intend on offering an opinion that you can tell that the officer is on the opposite side, the far side of Mr. Ellis, correct?
Yes.
But you can't tell how close he is to Mr. Ellis,
That's correct.
whether he's contacting Mr. Ellis at all.
That's correct.
Can you tell what the positioning of the officer is as to whether he's on his knees, on one knee, both knees?
No, cannot tell.
Can you tell the positioning of Mr. Ellis at all?
Yes.
Okay, and what is the position of Mr. Ellis?
Mr. Ellis's head is visible on the left side of the area. His pants are visible as his legs are to the right. But, again, my explanation was this is limited. Nobody can say whether he's on his back, on his head, on his side. So that's my opinion, is the video is limited to know that information.
And you said that his feet are to the right, is that right?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's to right of camera view.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yes.
And can you tell whether his feet are off to the side or up in the air?
No. Well, his feet are at approximately the same level of his head. So he'd be on the ground.
Okay.
His feet are not elevated above the plane of the ground.
Okay. And are you aware if Mr. Ellis is hobbled at this point or not?
I cannot tell, and the video can't tell us.
Based on all the information that you've reviewed, the interviews with the different officers, are you aware of whether Mr. Ellis is hobbled?
I am aware that a hobble was requested. I don't recall It's not any of my evidence. I wasn't asked to consider that question. I'm aware that a hobble was discussed. I don't have a recollection of whether it was used.
Well, let me ask you this. If Mr. Ellis's feet were up in the air, would that be something that would be visible, like up in the air behind him? Would that be something that would be visible in this video?
Possibly not. What I see is I see part of his pants, which could be his hip area. But I don't see anything that I would say would allow me to form an opinion that his feet are up in the air consistent with hobbling.
I'll tell you, I've looked at this video many, many times, and there's a moment that you see that there's a gap and you see another officer present there. Is that accurate?
I'd have to review it for a moment to...
Go ahead. Right there.
Yeah, I understand the question. I don't think there's enough on the video to tell us whether or not he was hobbled.
Okay. You know what color shoes Mr. Ellis was wearing?
He had white reflective shoes.
Okay. Do you see any white reflective shoes in there?
No.
Okay. What does that suggest to you about what the positioning of Mr. Ellis is then at that moment? If you don't see his shoes in that moment there.
From what I can see from the video, that from... I don't know how much of his pants we're seeing. I think it's kind of from sort of the buttocks area down to mid-thigh. I don't see past there. So I can't say whether or not... We don't see it. The video doesn't show it. We don't see his shoes. There's officers in the way. So whether his shoes are further on the ground and flat or whether he's in a hobbled position, I think the position of the officers obstructs that ability to see.
Let's assume, for the sake of just this video here, that Mr. Ellis did have his feet up towards his butt in a hobbled position. Based on your review of this video, and obviously you viewed a lot of video in this case, would that be something that would be visible in that moment there?
I think it'd be inconclusive. There's so much shadowing and obstruction of bodies. I wouldn't say that the video is conclusive of either possibility. I think we just say that video is limited, can't tell us the answer to that.
Okay. And Exhibit 445, what's the difference between Exhibit 444 and 445?
Your Honor, that's outside the scope. We're not offering 445 at this time. We're not going through 445 with this witness.
You guys can talk about that on your time.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the court entertaining it, so thank you.
Okay, so we're all on board on what this all represents. You did say that Exhibit 444 was within another video, and I couldn't remember what exhibit number you said that was.
It was in the sync video, Your Honor.
As,
original is 435. Wait, 434. No, I was right first time.
435.
And it's also Ms. White's video, either
Right.
22 and 23. In addition to that, I would note, defense counsel mentioned he hadn't seen it before, and it was new. This was utilized, looped, in numerous interviews with officers.
Anyway, okay, we ready for the jury? Okay, let's have the jury.
Contains Miss White's, one of Miss White's cell phone videos. Did you do any magnification or stabilization to that video?
Yes.
And could you explain to the jury why you did that?
I was asked to create a video that was closer into the activity when the emergency services and the police were in the area around Mr. Ellis on the ground, and make it as reliably close and stable as possible.
And you had already authenticated the video that you made this from, and then went through the steps of magnification and stabilization.
Yes.
Your Honor, state offers in evidence 444.
I don't have any objection.
444 is admitted.
Permission to publish.
Proceed.
Could you please tell us what time it starts?
Yes, in the timeline, this event starts at 23:32:11.
Could you please explain?
23:32:11. Thank you.
And Mr. Fredericks, are you able to advise the jury of the location of Mr. Ellis's head in this video?
Yes, just go backwards to a point that's a little easier. So I've stopped the video at 23:32:18, where there's a little bit more light in that particular area, and I'm using the mouse to point to Mr. Ellis's head, so I'll stop there. That's the location of his head.
Okay. And just for the record, your mouse was hovering over the area that's about a third of the way in from the left, and on the ground appears to be black with some white over top of it.
Yes, there's kind of a half white circle around the neck area.
Okay. And based on your review of the evidence, are you able to indicate what that half white circle represents?
No.
And with that, are you able to make any determination of which way Mr. Ellis's head is facing?
His head is facing to the left of the camera, so toward into the intersection area.
And are you able to make any determination as far as his body position?
We can see his sweatpants just kind of to the right of the head. There's a lot of officers in the area that are kind of obstructing much more of a view. And it's fairly dark and shadowy in that area.
And in seeing his sweatpants, are you able to make any determination what direction his, or what part of his body is depicted in that area between the officers?
Based on the position and the size of the officers there and the height of the officers who are sort of on the other side of him, because we can see his body, he appears to be on the ground, but the video doesn't give us enough information or resolution to know whether he is on his side, on his back, or on his stomach. We can't tell.
And are you able to tell if that's his hip area or just that it's his pants?
This is pants.
And are you able to, does the video provide you, in watching the entire video, does it provide you any information on where Mr. Ellis's feet are located?
Somewhere below in the pants area or some. No, it does not. We can just see the pants.
And with that, are you able to make any determination if his feet are up in the air or if they're down below?
Looking at this video, nobody can determine, because the video doesn't provide that information, to know whether or not his feet were in any specific position.
And if we we can move on to the next exhibit, which will be Exhibit 549. And actually, Your Honor, I apologize if we can go back to Exhibit 444. Are you able to determine if there's any officer in the vicinity of Mr. Ellis that is not at standing height?
Yes, there are a few.
And can you, is there anyone that is located, who is located the closest to Mr. Ellis as far as an officer is concerned?
Well, there are uniformed individuals with, what we refer to normally as a badge. I can't tell what service they're with, and I can't identify these officers. There's one that is in a crouched or kneeling position. Can't tell either way, but they're crouched down on the other side of Mr. Ellis, and I'm pointing to this individual sort of between these two officers. And then closer to Mr. Ellis's head, there's another uniformed individual who has a shoulder flash similar to a police uniform and something reflective on the front, again similar to a police uniform. I can't identify who these people are.
And can you tell us anything about the officer that is crouched down on the far left, closer to Mr. Ellis's head? Are you able to tell us anything about how close he is to Mr. Ellis?
When the lights reflect in the area and kind of reflect the area where Mr. Ellis is, his uniform becomes a little bit more reflective. So they're being reflected at the same time, same location. So they're very close to each other. I can't tell whether they're in contact, just that they're on the other side.
And are you able to make any determination as far as what part of the body of that officer is in contact with the ground?
No, we just can, that's why I can't tell whether the officer is kneeling or crouched. The officer's lower body isn't moving, it's fairly stable, but the individual is fairly stable, but I can't see what part's on the ground.
And the other officer that is, you had pointed out earlier, is out of view at the moment. If you can get back to the, right there. Are you able to, the color you said it's shaded and it's distorted a bit, are you able to make any determination as to the skin tone or color of the officer?
No.
Race? Nothing?
No.
And with the other officer, no?
No.
Thank you. If we can go to 549, please. And Your Honor, before we publish that, prior testimony about a camera perspectives, this is the one that the court ruled for modifications.
This is 549, right?
Correct. And the state is,
Just ask the witness what it is, just like any other witness, like any other exhibit.
would you please explain what 549 is?
549 provides a Google Earth perspective of the area with highlighted fields of view from where the camera is to what the camera at certain points was able to was recorded a field of view.
Is it a redacted version of the 544 that you previously testified about from the jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state offers any evidence 549.
Your Honor, I just have the same objection, it should be only for illustrative.
Not sure what that is, but okay. Mr. Conrad, any comment?
No, I just heard.
549 is admitted.
And Mr. Fredericks, could you please take us, or permission to publish? Thank you. And if you can please take us through the slides, inform us of what they depict, please.
This is the Google Earth perspective of 96th Avenue South. The home with the camera, we've been discussing the vision camera, I'm pointing to at the bottom center of the image. And the home security perspective from this house, looks out onto the street, and this is the approximate field of view of that particular camera. So I've highlighted in yellow, and that covers the area depicted by the camera that we can identify.
Move to the next perspective.
This is the video taken by Mr. Cowden, and the video was recorded from this approximate perspective. So it captured the traffic light, which is the center of the intersection here, captured the building in the background here, and part of the crosswalk, which is on the right-hand side. So this field of view depicts that primary perspective.
If we can go to the next slide.
And this is the two of them together, so there's an overlay, there's an area that is consistent between the two, so that is covered by a couple of different, anything that occurs in that area is covered by both cameras.
And did you also do some measurements from the perspective of each video?
Yes, provided approximate measurements to there's a manhole on the roadway just in front of, or just basically where this pointer is. And so I just did a measurement, an approximate measurement from this perspective, the Cowden perspective, and from the security home.
And just for the record, the vehicles that are depicted on the bottom portion of this exhibit are not vehicles that were in place at the time of this incident.
Correct.
And if you can go to the next slide, please. And first, you said you did measurements and to the manhole. Why is the manhole why did you choose to do the manhole as the point of location?
The manhole is a permanent fixture on the ground. It's depicted in multiple videos and images, scene photos. So it's a constant that we can always point to.
And when you say it's depicted in multiple videos, is that videos of the interaction between Mr. Ellis and defendant Burbank and Collins?
Yes, it's close to that activity, very close.
And so what is the measurement from the Vivint video to the manhole?
Approximately 112 feet.
And what is the measurement from the Cowden video or from his vehicle, front of his vehicle, to the manhole?
Approximately 68 feet.
That is the end of that exhibit?
Yes.
If you move to the next, I just have a few questions about, have you reviewed exhibit number 548, the PowerPoint slide?
Can I just have a moment? Not published. 548.
Yes.
Yes.
And is that a PowerPoint slide that depicts the timing of the videos for the Vivint, Cowden, and White videos?
This is an earlier version of that? Yes.
Your Honor, if I can have a minute. Actually, we have 548 for the version that the court has. Are you able to show that to Grant on his monitor only without displaying it? Okay. Mr. Fredericks, if you can.
Just one page. Yeah. Great. Thanks. Display here.
And after reviewing that, is that 548, the one-page exhibit, accurately depict within, I think you said 1/100th of a second on a few of them, the timelines for those videos?
It's very accurate to a very precise time period, yes.
Thank you. And Your Honor, the state offers into evidence 548 for illustrative purposes.
Can I report here, Mr. Bonner?
Sure.
Just want to be sure, on the Vivint video start time, what is that referencing?
It references when the Vivint recorder began to encode images, so it's that time period.
I know it says start time. My question, I guess, more specifically is, you looked at the entire, you were provided the entire Vivint video that you would have received, correct?
Multiple video clips, yes.
And they're in 29-second increments, is
Not-
that about right?
Not all of them, but majority, I think.
Yeah. And your start time on this one, on this proposed exhibit here, that start time references when the police are at the scene, is that accurate?
Let me just review it for a moment.
I mean, I'm okay.
This is the calibrated start time,
Referencing what?
referencing all of the sources from the synchronized calibration sources. So from the radio broadcast to the cell phone metadata, so all the authenticated pieces together, this is the sync time.
Is it fair to say that all the video, every last one of them that you receive actually start, and I'm talking about Vivint right now, start earlier than that time that you have on here?
There was a video clip that started before the events.
And then there was a gap, correct?
Correct, yes.
Of several minutes, correct?
That's correct.
And so this doesn't reference that first video clip that you received, as well as the gap between when Vivint started recording again. Is that accurate?
Yes, I received video that was recorded long before the event started, that there was a gap, and then this is the first video that has any time.
When you say long, we're talking a few minutes. Is that a fair generalization?
More than a few minutes, I think.
Less than 10 or approximately 10?
We had 16-minute gaps in period. It might have been 10 to 16 minutes. May have been 8 to 10, I'm not sure.
And you made that decision to cut that part out?
I looked for anything that was relevant, and I chose not to include it because there was nothing that was relevant to my examination, which included anything that would have, I looked at it with a lot of detail to try to study light patterns to see if we could determine, another source of timing. So I spent a lot of time on that piece, but there was nothing that I could use that would have assisted, in my opinion, my examination.
I don't want to get it, and we'll talk about that later on, but you made a relevancy determination yourself.
I did, yes.
Any other questions?
That's all I have.
Any other voir dire from any of the defendants? Okay, the state's offered this for illustrative purposes. Any objection?
Just for, not for just, it's late. I have no objection for illustrative purposes.
No objection.
Okay.
All right. I got one quick question, though, about this. When we were talking about Exhibit 546, I believe you said the event timeline begins at 11:21:39, and this one starts at 11:21:41. I know it's 2 seconds, but was there a reason for that?
For my slate. The timeline started at the very, very beginning of video that says event timeline. There was a 2-second slate, so that's where it went back.
All right. 548 is admitted for illustrative purposes only.
Please publish. And
What's the question?
Mr. Fredericks, when you said for your slate, those 2 seconds, was there any actual image that came up on those 2 seconds?
No, there was no video, audio, anything. It was just a black slate. It was just where the clock had to start somewhere.
And I recognize it's not on your computer, so it may be best for, please pick a position to stand so you can actually see it as long as you
Oh, this helps. Thank you.
And in reviewing the video timeline that's here with the Vivint and with Cowden, and then Vivint, and then Cowden again, is there any lapse in time from 23:21:41 to 23:22:58 where there's no recording?
The between 23:21:41 and when the Vivint, or when the Cowden ends at 23:22:58, we have video of the events.
So there's no interruption in video, it's just from multiple sources at that time.
Correct.
And then approximately how many seconds between where the Cowden video ends and the next Vivint video starts?
About 16 seconds.
And what about, and that Vivint goes for approximately 29 seconds
Yes.
and ends at 23:43. How many seconds are between when Vivint ends and starts up again at 23:50?
About 7 seconds.
And when Vivint ends at 23:24:19, after 29 seconds of recording, how much time passes between that and when the next Vivint video starts at 23:24:34?
About 15 seconds.
And when that next video starts at 23:24:34, does that coordinate and correlate with the exhibit that you previously showed of the video of the patrol car, the second patrol car on scene with Defendant Rankin in the vehicle?
Yes.
And then there's another 29 seconds of recording until 23:25:03.
Yes.
And about how much time passes between the end of the Vivint video there and when Miss White's first video starts at 23:32:05?
Just over 7 minutes.
So there's 7 minutes of no video.
Yes.
And then Miss White's first video ends at 23:32:20. How much time between that video and when the second video, or excuse me, when the next Vivint video starts at 23:41:17?
Almost 9 minutes.
Just a minute, Your Honor. No further questions from the state at this time, with the understanding that, as the court previously noted, this witness will be recalled later in the
Sure. But cross-examination.
Let's just start right here.
You want me to sit down?
Yeah, you might, well, I guess we might look at this a little bit. Thank you very much. Mr. Frederick,
I can see it from
just number one, other than perhaps a Zoom interview in this case, we've never met before, is that fair to say?
I don't think we have.
Yeah. I don't think so very much. So, as you indicated here, this Vivint video right now that you have on this exhibit that's just been admitted, this is your production, right?
Yeah, and I have to apologize. I know the jury can't see me right now. Do you want?
I don't mind you.
You want me to come back out?
Sure.
Okay.
It probably makes sense. I apologize. I don't control the court here, but is that all right?
I think I lost control a long time ago. But anyway, whatever works for the presentation the best, that's fine with me. So,
Probably makes sense so you can be seen, and you're going to talk to the jury, so
Okay, I'm sorry.
unless you're getting tired here. Need a chair?
All right,
yeah, we can get a chair for you.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so this is your production, correct?
I assisted the Attorney General's office to produce this exhibit, but this is my data. I validated it. I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you.
Thanks for the effort there. So, look, you assisted in the production.
Yes,
They gave you the data.
I gave them the data.
You gave them the data.
Yeah.
You have looked at all the videos in this case. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
As part of your as part of the work you've done on this case.
Yes.
I think yesterday you testified, at least as of sometime yesterday, you'd put about 300 hours or so in this case.
Probably. Yes.
At A+ now, right?
Yes.
And more in the future. So, the Vivint video, as indicated, the part that you found relevant begins at 23:21:41, correct?
Well, I don't know if it's fair to characterize that I felt that it was relevant. I reported to the Attorney General's office that I was unable to find anything relevant before that time. And so we agreed that that was the likely place, the best place to start, because there was nothing recorded of the events before.
Okay.
And I spent some time on the earlier videos to see if I could find anything.
Correct. And so I'm using the relevant, you use the term, so I'm using the term, okay?
Okay.
And so using your term, and your definition of relevancy, at least in this context, was what you could see in relation to this episode involving, at least initially, Mr. Ellis and officers Burbank and Collins. Is that accurate?
Well, again, using the word relevant, it was relevant to my examination and not using a legal term, so I'm not trying to dictate
Understood.
what's here. So I was given a number of videos, and I was advised of the events that unfolded. I read all the information that was provided to me, and then went through all the videos. I attempted to find activity that was relevant to my examination prior to that point.
And the key word is activity. Correct?
I'm not sure what else to use, but yeah, activity, evidence, relevant data, anything that could assist in this case.
For example, you watched the entire Vivint video.
Yes.
And we agree, there's no dispute that there's the actual recording that you received starts earlier than 23:21:41.
Yes.
And we agree it's several minutes, whether it's 10, give or take a couple.
Well, there are multiple recordings.
Right, and the point is, and I think we talked here a moment ago, a lot of those clips are 29 seconds. The next one starts at, just for example, 0 to 29, 30 to 58, so on and so forth down the line. Ballpark.
Ballpark.
Okay. And prior to 23:21, that 23:21:41, that's the beginning, if I'm not mistaken, of the second clip in that entire Vivint production that you would have received. Is that accurate?
I don't recall clips before that, but there might have been. I know there was one for sure before.
And in fact, in that one clip that came before this one, what it shows is vehicles coming across from right to left, from into view, out of view of the Vivint camera, correct?
I think in left or right, too.
Okay. I was just going to get to that. And it also shows going the opposite direction.
Yes.
And in fact, I think yesterday you said the Vivint is activated by movement.
It's designed to be activated by a certain kind of movement.
Okay.
Yes.
If it's working properly.
If the movement meets the threshold to trigger the camera.
Such as a vehicle.
Not necessarily.
Okay. Well, in fact, getting to that point,
Yeah.
but it did, at least on a couple occasions, was activated by a vehicle driving across.
It was triggered at the time. It was, no, not necessarily.
Okay.
It was triggered at the time that a vehicle happened to be driving by.
Okay.
Did that vehicle trigger the camera by motion? I don't know.
Okay.
So the motion can be set on any system by triggering light changes in particular pixel locations. So someone could say in a camera, I only want it to trigger if somebody reaches toward the doorbell, and within this,
Jury, by the way,
yeah, I'm sorry, and within that little area of pixelization where the doorbell is, if somebody reaches forward and their hand or body reflects off of the light, then a certain sensitivity can be set in the DVR to say that should be a trigger event. Others will be when somebody walks up within 10 or so feet that triggers the pixels around the stairs. That could be the trigger event. So when a car drives by, if it's a little foggy out, the beam of the light could actually affect the pixels at the stairwell. And even though there's no motion on the stairwell, just the beam of light in a foggy day could trigger the motion detection. So there's many different methods of triggering based on the sensitivity of the system. I don't know what the sensitivity of the system is. That's why sometimes we saw a video start with a car in the middle of the intersection. Some, the car was down the road driving toward it. So I don't know what the trigger event is.
But it was triggered.
It was triggered, but it might not have been triggered with all motion.
Okay. And just for the record, it wasn't, there's no indication it was foggy this evening, just you were using that as an
I was just
example.
using it as an example, yes.
And you would agree with me, whatever the triggering event was in that first clip that you received, we did see vehicles going both directions from beginning to end, pretty much. In the picture, out of the picture. Would you agree with that characterization?
There was motion, I think, when each of the videos was recorded, there was some motion. I can't recall.
Okay. And I'm talking vehicles specifically, and I'm not talking about the vehicles that we're talking about today, but other vehicles that I guess you thought, for your purposes, were not relevant. Accurate?
There were vehicles depicted on the first video clip X minutes before the event.
And the first video clip, I think, was 29 seconds.
I'd have to go back and review.
And that's fine.
The clip is 29 seconds long, you're saying?
Do you agree with that or not?
It's highly likely, but we can see some that are, this one's is 19 seconds and...
And then you agree with me there's a gap.
Yes.
Let's say, because whatever the length of that first clip was, there's a gap. And at that gap, the next time recorded is the 23:21:41, right?
Yes.
Fair to say?
Yes.
And at 23:21:41, the police cruiser is there.
Already there.
Correct.
Yes.
Like Star Trek, beaming down to the planet.
I disagree with that.
Okay. Well, we didn't see it drive up there.
Nope.
You don't disagree with that.
Nope.
Okay. And you don't see the officers getting out of the vehicle. You
Correct.
don't disagree with that, right?
Correct.
The next thing we see after that first 29-second clip, or whatever it is, if it's 30 seconds or whatever, is the officers in the street in front of the vehicle with Mr. Ellis. Correct?
The Vivint camera perspective captures pixel motions at the time that without other video, I wouldn't be able to identify what's happening from the Vivint camera in front of the police vehicle. So if you're asking me the Vivint camera depicts that, I would only know that because I have other camera views.
Okay. So it doesn't even show that. But again, you would agree with me, it doesn't show, none of the videos, in fact, whether it's Vivint, Cowden, McDowell, or White, show the officers in their vehicle, opening their doors, however it was done, and getting out of the vehicle.
Yes,
Agree with that?
that's correct, yes.
Okay. And the videos, the first video that shows anything of the officers and Mr. Ellis is the Cowden video that we were seeing here today, right?
I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Well, there's going to be other videos, right?
Well, you're asking me the first video, so I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Well, that's fine.
Given the ruling from the court.
Let me rephrase it then.
Yeah.
I can
thank
rephrase
you.
it. So the video we saw here today, that was Cowden's video.
Yes.
Right now, and everything in that, what we've watched is from Cowden, other than when we got to the White later on,
And the Vivint videos.
and the Vivint. But Vivint didn't show, I think if I understand you correctly, the actual struggle going on out there.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's all Cowden at this point.
At this point, that's what we've seen, yes.
And now I think we can probably sit down right now, although it's 4 o'clock. Maybe you want to really sit down.
It is 4 o'clock, we can take this might be a good breaking point. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not discuss a case among yourselves with anyone else. Do not permit anyone to discuss a case with you or in your presence. Have a good evening, and we'll see you back tomorrow at the same time, a little before 9. Thanks, everyone.